Amid widespread disruption at home and abroad, U.S. President Donald Trump will tomorrow address a joint sitting of Congress, his first appearance in the House since returning to the White House 6 weeks ago. Now, this speech arrives amid sweeping changes domestically that seek to reconfigure and reshape the federal government.
His tone, I think, is going to be triumphal. His tone is going to be, one might even say, imperial. President Trump has been saying consistently that he won a landslide election and a mandate from the American people. And the truth matter is, historically speaking, it actually was a very, very close election. More people in the country did not vote for the president than voted for him, more registered voters.
It certainly has been consequential. He talked during his first term about draining the swamp. He was unsuccessful in doing that in his first term, and he is certainly doubling down and appears to be determined to do that now. I expect that he will be respectful but pointed. He was actually, I thought, fairly measured in all of the other State of the Union addresses that he gave during his first term. But I think he's going to focus on the themes that he has been displaying at an incredibly rapid rate.
Well, to speak more on this, let's now speak to SABC News US Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Sherwin, a very good afternoon to us. Thank you so much for your time, so much anticipation and expectation. So while tomorrow is seen as this a big day in the US political calendar, I mean, the president's first address to Congress since winning the White House, almost every day there seems to be some big moment, and tomorrow is unlikely to be any different, I would imagine.
Yeah, every day, Unati, feels a little bit like a mini State of the Nation or State of the Union address. Of course, tomorrow is not called a SOTU or State of the Union because it's so soon after the president's inauguration, right, just 6 weeks ago. So they basically just call it a joint address to both houses of Congress and, of course, the pomp and circumstance that goes along with that. Of course, this will be a different configuration in the House of Representatives. You'll have a Republican Speaker of the House that will be sitting behind the president. You'll have a Republican vice president, right, J.D. Vance. You'll have the president himself. You'll have the leadership of a Republican-dominated House of Representatives and the Senate. And so this will be a speech very much tailor-made to the MAGA base of this president, and it'll be triumphant and imperialistic, as some of our analysts and experts have said. Every day this president has been front and center on our television screens, whether it's been hosting, the media in the Oval Office, or that freewheeling exercise that we saw on Friday between himself and Volodymyr Zelensky that didn't go very well, or be that Keir Starmer before that, or Emmanuel Macron before that. And so this has been a presidency that has been sort of very much on our television screens, also almost akin to reality TV in many circumstances. And so the president is likely in the speech tomorrow night to lay out what he sees as major accomplishments, right? The tearing down of the federal bureaucracy, led no less by the South African-born billionaire Elon Musk through his Department of Government Efficiency, the slashing of the federal workforce, the elimination, for all intents and purposes, of the U.S. Agency for Development, talking about, tearing down the Department of Education. He declared an emergency at the southern border. He'll talk about how ICE is removing illegal and deporting illegal immigrants to the United States. And the list goes on, right? This is also a president that is front and center in terms of big foreign policy shifts right now, the relationship with the European Union. Will this president retain the United States' status in organizations like NATO? You're talking about him being a mediator now in peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Does Ukraine continue to see Trump as an honest broker in that regard? He's talked about changing Gaza into a Riviera of the Middle East. Is he serious about that? Are we going to hear more about that? Are we going to hear about trade and tariffs, which has been central in terms of those executive orders? So there's a broad spectrum of things Donald Trump is likely to speak about tomorrow in that speech to Congress. But don't miss the pageantry and the circumstance here. This will be a very victorious, a very strong speech, given the fact that Donald Trump really believes he has the windows at his back right now.
Interesting. So, I mean, like you rightfully say, while these speeches tend to be very domestically focused, what can we expect, though, in terms of just U.S. foreign policy, given that the news cycle is currently dominated by matters related to Ukraine? Of course, we saw that meeting with the president there. Concerns around the Gaza ceasefire continued, among other issues, including global trade, as you've said.
Yeah, very much. Those are very much the key foreign policy issues that certainly people and observers around the world will be watching. Is the president going to take a different posture in terms of the mediation role that he's given himself in terms of finding a negotiated settlement to this 3-year plus war between Russia and Ukraine? What will he say about the imperiled Gaza ceasefire, right? We're about 6 weeks into that ceasefire. We're now talking about whether phase 2 of that ceasefire deal can happen or not. You've now seen the actions from the Israeli government in terms of blocking aid into Gaza. Again, where do we go from here, and what leadership can one expect from the United States president in the context, right, of this being an America First president, where foreign conflicts are not his concern in terms of U.S. involvement in those conflicts, but it's certainly his concern in seeking to try to get those conflicts resolved. And so we'll hear a bit about that, but also I think the big question around the world from a more global perspective will be the reciprocal tariffs that this president has signed through executive order, where they are essentially evaluating bilateral trade relationships around the world, be that South Africa, Canada, you name it, Mexico, right, and seeking to then insert reciprocal tariffs on goods and services that are charged to U.S. companies importing goods from abroad. So there are some very real economic questions and market-related concerns as to what the president might say in that address. But in terms of sort of your bread and butter stuff, geopolitical stuff, big questions about the ongoing and future relationship between the United States and its traditional ally, the European Union, Europe writ large, but also his this movement and this détente, this refiguring of the relationship with Moscow. Where do we go from here, right? We are hearing that the two countries are going to be reappointing ambassadors and reconstituting their diplomatic staff, which was suspended when Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. So certainly a lot of bread and butter issues for a lot of countries around the world in terms of what Trump will say tomorrow.
Interesting times indeed. Thank you so much, Sherwin, for that analysis and, of course, unpacking what we may expect then tomorrow. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, our correspondent there in the U.S., of course, ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's address at a joint sitting of Congress tomorrow.